Hey, what is up, guys? Today we're going to be doing another awesome video on math and stuff. We're going to be talking about domain and range, so let's get to it. It's going to be lit. So, for domain and range, we've talked about this a little bit before. There's two different things. The domain always refers to your independent inputs, and the range always deals with your dependent outputs. In terms of x and y, domain is always going to be your x values, and your range is always going to be y values, okay? So let's take a look how this looks on an actual graph for a moment here. So over here, I've drawn a graph of a function. So let's say that this function is f of x, and I'm asking what are the domain and range. Now when we're thinking in terms of domain and range, x and y values, sometimes it's a little too abstract and it's really hard to think through what does this actually mean and what does this connect to. And I think maybe that's the source of the problems that students had on questions 1 and 2 for our end of unit assessment that we took. So domain always refers to x values. So let's take a look at this. Instead of x values though, let's think of this as time, and on our y values, let's think of this as a height. So in that context, our domain, our independent inputs, our x values, are time values. Things are happening at various times. Now, in this context then, our y values are height. What is happening? Well, the height of something is changing over time. So we're just talking about a range of different heights. So if we look at domain here, whenever we give a domain of a function, what we're looking for is a set of inputs for our function. It's a set of x values. It's independent quantities that we have for inputs. So if we're thinking in terms of time here, we're always going to go from the furthest left to the furthest right point for our domain. So if you take a look at this, we start over here at -2 as our lowest x value, and then it goes over here to +2 for our highest x value. So our domain then is going to be from -2 to 2, but not including -2. Because of that open circle. What that open circle right there at the end tells me is that there's not actually a point there. But it includes every single point up to -2, but not including -2. Now, if we wanted to write this more in math terminology, what we would say is that -2 is less than x, not or equal to, because -2 is not included, which is then less than or equal to +2. So this is the mathematical way that we would do it with inequalities, just the same words. Now, there's also another way that we can do it. We can list it as a brackets. So it's -2, 2, and on the right side we have a curved bracket representing that -2 is not included, and on the right side we have a squared off bracket representing that 2 is in fact included. So this is how we do our domain. We think of it in terms of at what times does my graph exist? For what time values is something happening? And in this case it's from -2 to 2. Now you might be wondering, like, negative time, what the heck is that? Well, it's not that it's negative time, it's just that we always have to pick some sort of frame of reference to be 0. So let's say 0 time was 8 o'clock this morning. -2 would just be 2 hours before that. +2 would be 2 hours after that. So it's not like there's negative time or going back in time because the past doesn't exist, right? Right. So the next thing that we need to talk about is range. Range refers to all of our y values. So I'm going to erase the domain. The range then is referring to the y values, and we always think of our y values in terms of the lowest point to the highest point. So in this case, with this particular context, it's heights. What is the lowest that you were, and what's the highest that you were? So for the range on this one, what we could say is, well, if we look at it, our lowest point is down here at -1 on the y. So our range is -1 to, well, what's our highest point? All the way up to 3. Now, are those both included? Well, I don't have an open circle down here, so -1 is included. That's a solid dot, so there's a point up there. So yes, both are included. Now, the way that we would represent that mathematically is we would say -1 is less than or equal to x, which is less than or equal to 3, or we could do the brackets again, -1, 3, this time with square brackets on both sides because it's being included. -1 is included, 3 is also included in our range. So, domain and range. Now, the next thing that we need to talk about is areas of increasing and decreasing. So increasing, well, if we think of this in terms of heights, when our graph is increasing, that's for what time values are we going uphill? If you think of functions like a roller coaster that you're riding on, whenever, as you're going from left to right, you're going uphill, it's increasing. Whenever you're going downhill from left to right, we would consider it decreasing. Now, when we give intervals of increasing or decreasing, I don't care exactly what the heights are. All I want to know is when is that happening. And your x, again, is always your inputs. For what inputs are your outputs going up or are they coming down? So in this case, in this particular context, I said that the x values are our times and the y values are our heights. So at what times is our height getting higher or getting lower? So if we take a look at this, as we read it from left to right, our graph starts to go downhill right here at the very beginning of our domain, and it continues to go downhill all the way until we get to -1. So in order to answer this question about increasing and decreasing, what I would say that it's decreasing from -2 to -1. Now the thing about increasing and decreasing is you actually have to have a change in order to determine whether or not it's included or not. Well, to figure out if it's increasing or decreasing. So our endpoints on here are never included. So we would say -2 less than x less than -1. Because here at -1, is it increasing or decreasing? Well, I don't know unless we're actually moving back and forth. But at any given point, we can't tell. So we always have to give a range, and we can't say that the endpoints are included. Now, increasing. Well, as soon as from -2 on your time up to -1, we're going downhill. And then starting at -1, it goes uphill. From -1 through 0, 1, and all the way up to 2. So I would say it's increasing from -1 to 2. Or you could say -1 is less than x, which is less than 2. So that's how we think about domain and range, and increasing and decreasing. Now, thanks my dudes for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. Be sure to smash that subscribe button and smash the thumbs up to donate to my Patreon. And don't forget to click that bell for notifications so you never miss another video. Squiggle out, my dudes.